It's time to wake up, folks. Good afternoon and welcome to the Thursday, April 18th, 2013 edition of Kiwanis Club of Cleveland. Our patriotic song today will be led by Jerry Arms, our Pledge of Allegiance by Larry Bentley, and our invocation by Matt Ryerson. Please face the flag.
My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for this week in the midst of all this tragedy, Lord, in West Texas, in Boston, and everything around the world. Lord, we ask you to remind us to lean on you. Give us guidance and direction and courage moving forward. In your name we pray.
Amen. Very good. Jerry, I know we have maybe a guest or two today with us, do we not?
Well,
We got Mr. Kilgore.
Kilgore, Bob.
Alan Bradford.
Alan Bradford. I went to watch in the backside, I guess. Thank you.
Very good.
Alan?
And by the way, that's Bruce's dad.
I thought it was brother.
Oh, cool.
All right, Mystery Kiwanian. Do we have a Mystery Kiwanian today? Anyone?
We do. Only 8 people shook my hand, so the last person was Todd Walker.
Very good. Todd, where would you like your $2 go? Either to the foundation or would you like your $2 go to Eliminate, which is our international program, our international project to eliminate maternal neonatal tetanus.
I had my answer way before that. Foundation.
Good deal. $2 foundation. All right, split the pot dollar, split the pot opportunity, not a lottery, not illegal gaming, anything of that nature. Having been in Las Vegas last week, it is definitely not Vegas. Your odds are greatly increased here. If our guest would pick out one of the tickets, read the last 3 digits, please.
743.
743. Oh, well, Winston, how much was in the pot, by the way? How much? So $6.50 to the winner. Go to Winston.
I got it.
Very good. All right, just a couple of announcements on our newsletter. It's showing on this next Thursday for the 25th that we would not be actually meeting during the day, but would be the Harlan White dinner at night. We are meeting here next week at noon. The Harlan White Citizen of the Year dinner is going to be moved to May the 9th, Thursday night, May the 9th, 6 to 8 p.m. up here at the Mountain View, 6 to 8. I will be sending out requests for RSVPs. During that time, the noonday meeting will not be held, but we will hold our regularly scheduled meeting at 6 p.m. next, or on May the 9th, Thursday, May the 9th. Also, a couple other announcements. International Conventions is in Vancouver, June 27th through the 30th. And also our Kentucky-Tennessee District Convention is set to be held at Jenny Wiley State Park in Kentucky on August 8th through the 11th. I sent an email and put a post on Facebook regarding these also. We need 2 delegates and 2 alternates to actually go, or at least on paper, we got to send this in by April the 30th, by the way, for international convention. So if you're interested in going, or if you had made plans to go, please let me know as soon as possible. I would really appreciate it. Also, we will need 3 delegates to go to the district convention up in Kentucky. It's a little bit cheaper fare to go there than the Vancouver, British Columbia. Just so you want to know. Don't need a passport to go to Kentucky, but sometimes you might wonder about that. We're not going to Hazard. We'll be okay. If you're interested in representing the club, I know I'm going. I think Bruce has indicated he may be going to the district convention, but we definitely need 3 to go. Anyway, it's a family affair. They've got it up there. They've got different activities, fishing, boating, you name it, in terms of family activities and activities you can share by yourself. Also, we've got a short board meeting, actually a continuation. We stood in recess from Tuesday for 5 minutes. We got a couple of items of business immediately after the meeting today on board business. Also, Alan Winter, do you have an announcement about Kiwanis One Day Boys and Girls Club?
Yes, each year, International encourages each club to participate during this time of the year in April to have what we call Kiwanis One Day. And this year it will be Saturday, April 27th from 9 till noon, Boys and Girls Club. And we're going to be putting up a climbing wall, constructing a climbing wall, and also constructing some playground equipment. So I have a sign-up sheet on each table. Encourage everyone to participate in that. So it will be Saturday 27th at 9 a.m. Boys and Girls Club.
I hope the playground equipment's not one of those you get in a great big box, got 10,000 pieces to it, and the instructions don't work.
That's right.
Okay, good. All right, very good. Make sure to sign up for that, and not this Saturday, but the week after. Leanne, you got anything about service leadership?
Walker Valley Kiwanis meets this Monday at 1:30 at the school.
Very good. Also, the investment committee is going to meet next Thursday, the 25th, immediately after the meeting, to take up some business primarily about scholarships, how much funds are available, and so forth on that. That's my understanding. At least that's what my, do what?
Mike Thomason's out of town next week.
He is?
Yeah,
Well, that's what I had down was for the 25th.
it's gonna be May the 2nd.
All right. Well, I'm glad to know that. Put that down there. All right, on my own, I know Kay's not here today, but we had several Kiwanians actually participate, help them on my own financial literacy class during the little village stuff up there at Walker Valley yesterday, as a matter of fact. And thank you, Charles, and the other members who actually showed up and helped in that particular cause. Pancake Day. I wasn't here last week, but I want to say a personal thank you to all the members and the committee for a successful event. Just so you know, of the food drive that we had that actually helped benefit the Caring Place with their small food bank over there, we had a little over 80 items that were donated. You know, we had $1 off a ticket and so forth, but we had over 80 items, non-perishable items, to be donated to them. So they've been taken over there. Looking to have an interclub either to Brainerd or Collegedale next week. I will give you additional details via email on that, either next Friday at noon to Brainerd. If that's the case, I have to let them know way ahead of time since they moved from Country Place Restaurant, since it's closed down on Calford Road, to over to the Holiday Inn, I think across, literally across the interstate over there. It's where they're meeting, and I have to let them know by 9 a.m. of the day of how many members will be there. See? Collegedale, they meet Wednesday? Yes. Wednesday at noon next week. It's a possibility we'll do it, but I'm not quite sure yet.
That's probably their board meeting day.
Which is an excellent day to go.
Yes. You can eat and run.
What you got, Jared?
Just a quick announcement on the
Yep.
speech contest. The division was held Saturday at the community, and the little lady who came and gave her speech on the Lord of the Rings won that in the 6th grade.
Well, great. That's wonderful.
Little Potter girl. Her last name was Potter.
Good deal. All right. Any announcements from the floor? I zipped through that. 12:24. We've done well. Do what? Oh, forgot about that. I guess I want to read that. Might be important. Elections. We've got, this will be the last week we read the nominees for the officers and board of directors for the club for the upcoming year, which will begin October the 1st. And we will actually be voting next week on these. President is Bruce Bradford. President-elect Tracy Hamilton. Vice President Matt Ryerson. Secretary-Treasurer Cheryl Domick. On board of directors, Charlie Sutton, Andy Sneed, Clay Reese, Gene Montgomery, Vince McLaughlin, and Leanne Boyd. And I understood there was a motion to cease nominations during last week's meeting, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct? Someone? Anyone?
That's correct.
That's correct? Okay, good. All right. I assume it carried. Okay. So we don't have to go through the Robert's Rules stuff, or Mason's Rules, and left from the table of motion to reconsider and all that stuff, okay? All right, those are your slate of officers and board of directors nominees we'll be voting on next week. By ballot, I will be contacting at least 3 members to do the tallying of the vote totals. And none of them will be, unlike us in Polk County, none of them will be members who actually on the ballot. So anyway, little inside humor on that. All right, I'll turn it over to Bruce Bradford, who is our program chair for April, to introduce our speaker.
If you know anything about industry or history, or if you're just from this area, will be our economics. It's impossible to overstate the importance of the Tennessee Valley Authority to our area and to our region. Our guest today was the Chief Executive Officer of the Tennessee Valley Authority for 8 years. He has been married to his wife, Myra, for 44 years. They have 3 children and 8 grandchildren, so you know how he's spending his time since retiring, and he presently resides in Knoxville. And that's all I'm going to tell you, because I don't want to steal any of his thunder. Please give a warm Kiwanis welcome to Tom Kilgore.
Thank you. I don't know, I see a camera out there, so I'm gonna fool it. I'll move around so they can't track me. How's that? It's my pleasure to be here. I want to talk a little bit today just about the past and the future. Can I do that? And keep you entertained for a few minutes. We'll be through in plenty of time. I know how Kiwanis are. You like to be prompt starting and prompt finishing. So I guarantee you we'll be out of here before 1 o'clock or at 1 o'clock. Talking about the past, when I speak in Chattanooga, I generally tell people it took me 40 years to get 40 miles because I grew up south of Chattanooga, married my high school sweetheart, which, as Bruce said, I've been fortunate enough that she stayed with me all these 44 years. And we promptly moved away so I could go to the University of Alabama. I'm a big Tide fan. You won't have to hold that against me too bad.
I like it.
1831, today, is when the University of Alabama was founded. So how many ever years ago that was, in 1831, it was founded today. And we went there. Myra, my wife, got her PhD. Does anybody know what a PhD is? Putting hubby through, that's exactly right. And the way I paid her for that finally was I put a scholarship at Alabama in her name, not my name, but in her name. The only time I think I've made her cry with joy. I've made her cry sometimes with, in pain and aggravation and anger, but that time it kind of got to her on the positive side. So we've been a long time together, and the day we got married on a Saturday. The Monday after I got married, I went back to work for TVA. So that's how I tell people it took me 40 years to get 40 miles. I worked for TVA that first summer, and then we went back to college and off to Texas, and just around and around. We've lived in 8 states. So that's my general connection to the area. I know Cleveland pretty well. When my son got married near Erie, Pennsylvania, we told everybody that day we stopped out here in Cleveland to have breakfast, and we said we're having breakfast in Cleveland, Tennessee. We're going to have supper, not dinner, supper in Cleveland, Ohio, which we did. And so that was a pretty neat thing. We told the folks in Cleveland, Ohio, that we'd had breakfast in Cleveland. They said, "Oh, well, you've been here all day." No, another Cleveland. So we enjoy that quite a bit. What I thought I'd start with is just remembering a couple of years ago. You know what happened a couple of years ago this month, right? You got affected, TVA got affected. I want to share with you my personal experience out of that, and we're going to look forward a little bit. On April the 27th, as you know, in 2011, we had a severe storm system move across. And I was in Knoxville that night. We set up early in the day because, as you can imagine, with TVA, we've got 17,000 miles of transmission lines going across the valley to keep all the lights on. Now, by the way, I have to put a disclaimer here. I'm retired. I'm not speaking for TVA. I don't want to be quoted for TVA. They're right now dismissing from their board meeting in Columbia, Tennessee. That's their issue, not mine anymore. But I still like to talk about things that are personal experience, and that's my prerogative. So I'm talking personal experience. But we were in the headquarters, we got the call early in the afternoon. It had trouble in Mississippi. Most of the power was out in Mississippi on the TVA system, then it moved across to Alabama. When it got to Browns Ferry, one of our nuclear plants, now a month earlier, actually 6 weeks, on March the 11th, so 6 weeks earlier than these tornadoes came across, there was an event in Japan. Everybody remember what that was? They had an earthquake, tsunami, and their nuclear plant gave them a lot of problems. But when the tornadoes hit in Alabama, it took out 7 out of the 8 lines that went into Browns Ferry, and so we basically had no off-site power. We had one little skinny line going in there. It was able to keep a few things powered up, but it wouldn't keep the lights on, much less everything else, pumps and motors and everything that was going on at Browns Ferry Nuclear Plant. So you can imagine that we were sitting there trying to hear, okay, what's going on down there? With all that power out, no phones down there. Everybody was trying to communicate with cell phones. I know kind of what happened in Boston with the communication, because when something like that happens, the cell phone towers do what? They overload fast, and you can't get a call through. So we were kind of sitting on pins and needles waiting to find out, is Browns Ferry okay? It was. The folks down there managed well. I'm proud to say that the operators that had been trained, the maintenance folks, they were out there literally when they had to, using their cell phones to shut the plant down. Everything worked fine. The diesels shut everything down. They powered up, gave us power to do everything. But then the tornado swept on across, and you know that because after they came across North Alabama, they hit at Trenton, down near and Rising Pond, all those areas down in there, devastated some of those areas. I think 7 to 9 came across Hamilton County, and then you got several up here in Bradley County. In fact, one of my friends the other day told me that, and I hadn't heard this story, that one of the quartet convention officers in Alabama had lost a plaque in Florence, Alabama, and somebody found it in Murphy, North Carolina, right on the line. And it had his name on it, and they returned it to him because it had his name on it. So all the way from Florence to, North Carolina, it wasn't right in Murphy, it was a little north of there. And that's how far things carried. We got canceled checks coming out of the air in Knoxville that were from down around Rainsville, Alabama, where we lost about 30-something people that day. And so that was a pretty traumatic day. By the time it got to Knoxville, it was mostly hail, and so you'd think, well, not too big a deal, except it took more to repair my house than I paid for my first house. By the time you put a roof on and put some glasses back in, that the hail had busted. I'm from Alabama, so it's busted, it's not burst. By the time you replace the glasses, I mean, literally we had hail about the size of a little bigger than golf balls that beat the windows and just broke them. So that was a significant day. It was significant for TVA. It was significant for me personally. It was significant for you in the area. But it was one of those times when you look back and you kind of see what people have done to rebuild. Now, I could take you to places, and you can probably find them here, where although the people have built their houses back, some near where relatives were killed, and everything else, you can still see the storm. I mean, you can literally, at Chestnut Grove Baptist Church in DeKalb County, Alabama, you can see where it came up the creek, turned and went over here, went that way, came all the way off of Fox Mountain, and you can see the track from Rainsville, Alabama, if you fly like I did in the helicopter, all the way up through there, and see it come off at Fox Mountain down in Alabama. All that was very traumatic. About 3 weeks later, I was speaking at the North Alabama Community College commencement address. The president down there, David, asked me if I would speak, and I agreed to do that. And I spoke to them about time marching on, because they had had 6 former students or students killed in that. In fact, Rainsville, Alabama probably had more per capita fatalities than any place else. Tuscaloosa got hit hard, but they lost about 40-something people, but that's a town of about 100,000. about 2,500, and they lost about 34 or 35 people there in that one place. 2 TVA kids, not employees, but the children of employees were killed, and it was my grim kind of duty to go to the funeral home and call on those parents. So it was a fairly traumatic day. But as I said to those students that day, time marches on. You have to put this in the rearview mirror. You have to learn the lessons that you can never be totally safe, regardless of what care you take and everything else. You always have to know that disaster could happen. But it's best to be prepared for the future, and prepared we are. As these folks rebuild, many of them are putting safe rooms. You know, my nephew is putting a safe room under his house, and boy, is it ever safe. He's pouring walls about a foot thick, putting an oak floor on that thing so he can take his 2 kids, if he needs to, and go to the safe room. So we're learning better how to prepare. But, you know, all that, time still marches on, and we have to think about, okay, we got to get our eyes off the past and go to the future. Last week I was somewhere and I heard Dr. David Jeremiah, who many of you may know, who pastors a large church in San Diego, say this. He was talking about vision, and he said this, which is kind of impressive. He said, your dreams need to exceed your memories. I'll let that sink in a little bit. Your dreams need to exceed your memories. Now, at my age, that's a pretty big order, because I've got a lot of memories. I've worked for 4 different utility companies. I've been CEO of 3 different companies. I've had a lot of experience. I've hit almost all 50 states. I'm going to make the rest of them this fall. And a couple of foreign countries, as I've been able to travel in my job and see people and meet people and go places that this boy from Sand Mountain should have never been able to go to. But it's important that our dreams exceed our memories. And your dreams here in Bradley and surrounding counties need to be about how can we continue to prosper and do things in the right way so that we lay a good foundation for those that will follow us, right? And so I'm excited to say, you know, as I call John Bradley, who runs the TVA Economic Development, I said, John, how are they doing up there in Bradley County? I want to know before I go talk to them. He said, boy, they're doing great. I said, tell me about it. And he said, well, Walker is keeping on in spite of one other of their competitions kind of slowing down and saying, well, maybe not so fast here. The economy is pushing us back. In spite of that, Walker is plowing ahead and really aiming toward not only the first announcement they made, but the secondary announcement and adding those jobs, which are going to be good for Bradley County. The second thing, though, that excites me is with Amazon coming here. You know, if you think about what we've come from, remembering again, I remember when I got my first cell phone for the company I worked for. It was about the size of a brick, you know, those things. You know, they weren't any smaller than that tea glass I drank out of, and you had to literally fasten them to the floor of your car, and you better be stopped when you tried to operate it, because, you know, you had to unlatch it and pick it up. It was heavy and all that. And today, we carry what amounts to a small computer on our belt, most of us. And even if you just have a standard cell phone, how much those communications are. In fact, I laugh because I'm a big fan of Star Trek, and I said, it's pretty close to saying, Scotty, beam me up, you know, because I can almost slap my chest and talk to my wife just by saying, call my wife, and my phone will do that. And so we've come a long way. We carry these literally computers that will find the next place I'm going or tell me, you know, when the Kiwanis were founded. Like it did this morning. I pulled up in the parking lot. I was here a little early. I was going, 1915, maybe 1913. And you had a little, you know, stuff go on, and you had to buy off the guy whose idea it was, and get all this established. You had a little controversy, just like TVA has controversy, right? In fact, one of the best quotes about TVA is controversial because it's significant. If it weren't significant, it wouldn't be controversial. Nobody cares about things that don't matter, right? But because it matters, it's controversial. And And so when you have somebody like the president propose to sell it, you know, it's a little bit controversial. By the way, the only thing I'll say about that is some people oppose it and some people don't know, and I say, well, try, you know, because, you know, if you're gonna sell something, you gotta pay off the debt, right? The big problem with TVA in that respect is they count TVA's debt as federal debt, but it's not. It's owed to the bondholders. Some of you may own TVA bonds. You can buy them, they pay a good rate of return. You know, if you bought them right now, they pay a good rate of return. In fact, they're hard to buy. They claim a premium right now because TVA's always paid them and they pay a good rate of, a good interest rate. But, you know, the fact that that's there, it's not like the rest of the U.S. debt. It's not owed on U.S. Treasury bonds or savings bonds like the rest of the trillions of dollars of debt. It's owed to private individuals. So the fact that they count it is a mistake. So anyway, that's the biggest thing about that really won't wash, because if you sold TVA, you'd still have to pay off the debt. And so there need to be something left. And so anyway, so your big thing is to see things like Amazon. I got off track a little bit there, which is like these cell phones. Just, I mean, you can order the books. I go on Amazon, I order used books. I mean, a lot of you think about ordering new books. I order used books. Lilienthal's journal, who was the first chairman of TVA, or kids' books that are out of print that really were good because they had a value system and everything. And they'll order them up and they'll put in the order, and then as they become available, they'll fill your order out. That's a great system, and that's just an indication of how technology is changing our lives, and some of it's right here in Bradley County. That's a great thing for us in the region. That's a great thing for you because you're here close. So, Vocker, Amazon, about Westinghouse, keeping jobs and really adding some too. So all of those kind of things show that you're doing something right. I don't know what it is because you're the ones that are here, but your elected officials, your Chamber of Commerce, which by the way, John Bradley says Gary Farlow and Doug Berry, great. So those of you that know them, just say, hey, Kilgore said, according to TVA folks, y'all are doing a great job, because they are, and they're having a lot to do with all this success that you have. So that's how we look forward. We look past, back, and we see the memories of where we came from, and the fact that, you know, there was a time when some of us can remember that even electricity was kind of like that early cell phone. My dad used his last World War II check from the Navy to put electricity in my grandmother's house. And so that's the TVA heritage I have. And so we've come from a time in one generation, basically, my dad's generation, from not having electricity to now we have these, like I said, small computers in our pocket that can look up worlds of information and just tell us how to do our jobs better. So as we go forward, the thing to always kind of keep your eye on is what are my plans for the future. Dwight Eisenhower said something like this. He said, when I'm in the midst of a battle, I find that my plans are seldom useful, but my planning was essential. Now, do you know what that means? It means if you don't go through the process of planning and you don't think about potential problems and you don't think about what could go on, you'll be sunk when you get to a critical part. But when you get to the heat of battle or the heat of competition or something, you got to be willing to adjust and know that the best laid plans of mice and men. But keep on planning, keep on working, communicate together, and know that the future looks bright for Bradley County. And with that, I'm finished ahead of time. I'll take a few questions if you have them, and then we'll call it a morning. Any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
The dams here on the Tennessee River, Chickamauga, Bluffsburg,
Right.
who owns those dams? Is that property of TVA?
Yes.
The dam?
Yes.
So when they weren't able to finish the lock at Chickamauga?
The dams are owned by TVA. The locks are owned and operated by the Corps of Engineers. because it's not TVA's responsibility for the transportation. That was somewhere past 1933. So the fact that the dams are on, we operate all the hydroelectric, we do the flood control and all that, but transportation per se is the Corps' responsibility, and so the Corps has to get funding for that. Unlike TVA, which gets no appropriations at all, the Corps has to get their money through appropriations, or that's how they get it. So that lock sitting down there at Chickamauga is somewhat stalled. My opinion is it'll eventually get finished. I don't know how, but we'll get that lock finished. It's too important. But it is the Corps' responsibility to rebuild. That makes sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is nuclear power really the future, or, and if it is it the large plants like we have now, or micro?
Yeah, so I'm gonna repeat the question for everybody. Is nuclear power really the future, and if it is it the large plants? Well, let me start by saying this. I had the privilege about 4 weeks ago of going to France and speaking in France to a group over there, and 74% of their electricity is produced by nuclear power. Here in the valley, about 40% of ours is produced by nuclear power. Nationwide in the U.S., only about 21 or 22. So I would say yes, nuclear power is essential because it doesn't produce anything that contributes to global warming at all. Produces no carbon dioxide, produces no sulfur dioxide, produces no nitrous oxide. Now, would I say do 100%? No. I think I'm one of these folks that says don't put all your eggs in one basket. You need to have a multitude of things, and so I think we ought to have some coal, some gas, and some nuclear, but we're not where we need to be on nuclear yet. Is it the small plants or the large plants? I think the future is going to lead us toward the smaller plants, and that's because, you know, Georgia Power is building a brand new plant from scratch right now, and it's going to cost $14 billion. That's almost worth more than the company. So you can't afford to build those big things with everything it's going to take. You could build the smaller ones and be able to afford them. And so I think we'll lead toward these smaller plants. That being said, Watts Bar up the road, you know, it's in the Chattanooga paper, well, it's in the Knoxville paper this morning. I don't know if it made the Chattanooga paper, that the NRC said it looks good, we've inspected it all. It'll be finished for about 4 to 4.5, so you can see about 1/3 the cost of building that new one down there. So it's going to be a good thing. It'll bring jobs to the area, and so it'll supply electricity. Whether the next one is down in Alabama on another unfinished TVA project, or if we let that go and go to Clinch River and build a small one, that's my successor's job. He's got to figure that out. When I left, we were going to do the one in Alabama, but I understand it has issues because the smaller technology is coming along. And for those of you that don't know, the smaller technology is a lot like what the Navy has used in their aircraft carriers. Bigger than the submarines, but it's a little bit bigger than the aircraft carrier, but it's got all of that experience with it. And that's why the smaller technology has a lot of promise. It is smaller, it can be made somewhere else and shipped in. That's a good thing, because a lot of the cost of these big units is you got to ship all this pipe and ship this and ship that and then assemble it on site. It's a lot of welding, a lot of, you know, very controlled. If you could make it one place and just assemble it all, put it on a barge and ship it there, boy, that'd be a lot simpler. So the quality control, the ability to learn that would be a lot better. That's why I think we'll head toward those smaller ones, so that you can do them like, I mean, they're more complicated than a car, but you can make them like you make cars, all in one place, and keep the workers there. Over here, and then I'll come back.
What's the significance of the dams at the Kilgore River, the smaller hydros on the Ocoee?
What's the significance
Yeah,
of them?
what do they hold for the future plan there on that? You know?
Maintain them. You know, if we were building them back today, probably, you know, whether or not you'd put a lot of generation there, I don't know. It's mostly recreational today, so that's a significance. I mean, they're a very big part of that recreation facility over there, and we do TVA, not we. I'm not a we. I'm a they. But TVA does charge for that, and they should, because all the water that goes for recreation could go through those turbines and, you know, make basically almost free electricity. But it's not a large amount, and so if you go up there and you have to pay a fee to canoe or raft down it, just be glad, because otherwise you'd pay it in your electric bill. So that's basically it.
It's a way with words, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're gonna pay me this way or pay me that way. And so it's all pretty good. Plus, I think the fees are really reasonable. I enjoy that rafting and everything like everybody else. But if you got it for free, then everybody's gonna pay for it in electric bill, and that's not fair. I always took the position when I was CEO of TVA that the users ought to pay, the boaters ought to pay for that. We have people complain at the marinas, and some of you may be marina owners, so I'll just say that about, well, the marina fees shouldn't be that large. Well, not everybody uses the boat, and so I wasn't willing to put all the charges for those marinas, or some of the charges for those marinas, and subsidize them, so that the boaters would have a cheaper rate, and then all the electric people pay. Now, it's a few cents, don't get me wrong. It's a few cents on the electric bill, but people that use ought to pay. That's my whole philosophy. And if you do it that way, you will have proper supply and demand signals, and everything will work. Okay? Yes, sir.
I'd say most of us have grown up with TVA. It's always been here.
Yep.
Is there any other company, I've heard Edison and some other place, that's even comparable to TVA? I mean, it produces so much more power and so many more dams, and what would be, is there anywhere that's close? Nothing?
Nothing close. The only thing that ever comes anywhere close is Bonneville Electric, way out in Washington, Oregon, or on the Columbia River. But they have very restricted, they really can operate only the dams on the Columbia River, and that's all they can do. They once could build power plants, and they started and messed it up, so they can't even do that now. They have one nuclear plant that they finished out there. So it really is not that similar to TVA. It's much smaller. It is still a part of the Department of Energy. It's still, you know, basically run by the federal government that way. It doesn't have its own independent board. So there is nothing else similar. And I guess the other thing I would say, and let me say this again about the proposal to sell TVA. Republicans proposed it, Democrats were against it. Now the Democrats are proposing it, Republicans are against it. So come see, come saw, you know. I mean, my issue on both of those is, why mess with success? It's worked, and it has kept rates lower. If you don't believe, any of you come here from Florida? Any halfbacks? I talked to a couple of halfbacks last week. Y'all know what halfbacks are, right? They moved to Florida from Chicago, and they decide they don't like it down there because they don't have a fall and a winter, so they move half back. And they stop places like North Georgia and East Tennessee and all of that. People that have been to Florida and moved back up here say, wow, your electric rates are really cheap, you know, because down there they're pretty high. Just the wholesale piece is more than what you and I pay for retail here. So when you get to feeling sorry for yourself, just move to Florida or someplace like that, and you'll be back. You'll like it better in East Tennessee. There is really nothing comparable, you know, and there are other utilities out there that would like to buy TVA until they look closely and they figure out that to pay off our debt, they'd have to raise their rates, and we don't want them raising rates, right? So we want them just to leave it alone because it's successful as it is. TVA stumbled across the years, don't get me wrong. We started building 17 nuclear plants at a time. Well, I don't care if nuclear plants are chocolate. You can't do that much at one time. You have to be more measured than that. And so while I was there, I said, we'll only do one at a time. We'll build Browns Ferry 1, we refurbish that, and then we do the Watts Bar 2, and then after that, we'll pick the next thing, and we'll do one at a time. And so hopefully they'll stick with that regardless of whether they go small or large. But I'd just say I think TVA has been a roaring success. At one time it was a better success than it is now, and that's because as things changed and you got to the late 70s and early 80s, where they were trying to do too much, they tried to do too much. But now hopefully we've backed it off, we're back in the right channel, on the right road.
What's your view of the sludge in Kingston?
Sludge in Kingston's all picked up, some of it we shipped to Alabama because we needed a permitted site, okay? And some folks in Alabama were glad to get it because we paid basically a couple of dollars a ton to put it there, and they used it to fund their schools. And they had a really good permitted site where basically they collected everything and it was all right. The rest of it that's up there now, we're actually building what I would call an underground dam. Okay, you're actually drilling down all the way to the rock, unearthing that, and building a wall all the way around so that it can never get out there again. And so it'll be better when we get finished with it, and it'll be another couple of years before TVA's finished with it. It'll be much better when they get finished than it was on December the 21st, 2008. Because we know it's done, we know that it's taken care of. And we're doing 10 other sites too. I mean, it wasn't just Kingston. When we went in to fix everything, we went to all of our other coal plants and fixed them too. It did significant work at other places. All right, now we're almost 1 o'clock, so no more than one more question. Everybody happy? Including me, because I'm finished.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Kilgore, and thank you, Bruce, for bringing a wonderful program. Just a quick reminder, we are meeting next Tuesday, high noon, up here, Mountain View, next Tuesday. We got a program, and Bruce has got that coming in.
Did you say Tuesday?
Or Thursday, excuse me. I've got Tuesday on my mind for some reason. I don't know why.
Is it your anniversary?
Nope, not yet. Yes. We are going to have we stood in recess on the board meeting from Tuesday, that's the reason why. From Tuesday till today, it'll take no more than 3 to 4 minutes, I promise you, to finish up what we got to do. And make sure if you've not signed up the sheets to volunteer on the 27th over the Boys and Girls Club, go ahead and do that, please. If not, do it next week. Make sure that Alan gets those back. And Tracy, did you have something?
Watch your email. I hope to send something out this week about Mother's Day flowers and give you some final details.
Very good. Seeing no further business come before the club, we'll stand adjourned.
I'll come right to you.
Well, they didn't show up. See, you gotta remember, one's me, one's Matt, and one other one's there. We're down to 7.
I'm surprised you don't do one just
Really,
All right.
yeah, we did right.